Hello and welcome to the Biology Career Insights, the podcast where we talk with experts from the field of biology to gain valuable insights into the careers and explore ways to navigate the job market in this ever-evolving field. I'm your host, Dr. Manish Kumar. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Swetha Suresh. Dr. Swetha Suresh is the head of innovation at Swissnex in India. Swissnex is an initiative by the Consul General of Switzerland that fosters collaboration between India and Switzerland in the areas of education, research, and innovation. Dr. Suresh is passionate about driving innovation and entrepreneurship with a focus on creative market opportunities for path-breaking innovations in the field of health tech, edtech, sustainability, and corporate innovation. She brings a wealth of experiences to her role, having worked across diverse sectors such as life sciences, impact fund management, and innovation consulting. Dr. Suresh is an expert in leadership and management, cultural translation, program design, stakeholder engagement, and implementation. She holds a PhD in pharmacology from the University of Cambridge, UK, and a B.Tech in Industrial Biotechnology from Anna University, India. Swetha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Such a pleasure to chat with you again, Manish. And I feel that the work that you've been doing in order to, kind of support students, professionals that are interested in the whole biotech pharma space has been exemplary right from, for many, many years now out of your own personal interest. So thank you for having me on your
Thank you,
podcast.
Swetha. Thank you so much, Swetha. So we'll dive in right away. So can you tell us more about your role as a head of innovation at Swissnex and the initiatives that you are currently driving?
Right. So before I tell you about my role, I think it's important to understand the Swissnex as an organization. So Swissnex is actually an outpost of the government of Switzerland that has to do with education, research, and innovation. And they had the foresight about 20 years ago to say that the future is all about innovation, that's about exchanges, and it's global and not so much siloed. And they started Swissnexes across what they thought to be the world's leading innovation hotspots. So we are only six Swissnexes around the world. And in India, Bangalore is one of them. That also tells you how Bangalore is located for the Swiss mentality in terms of innovation itself. The others, the first one was in Boston, San Francisco. We have in Shanghai in China, Rio in Brazil. And apart from Bangalore, the newest member of the family is in Osaka, Japan.
Wow.
So that's really what we do. And our main focus is, like I said, research, innovation, and higher education. So what I do is in the innovation space. And for me, it means two things. One is how do we help Swiss startups to really discover the India market? Because mentally, physically, they are so far away from Switzerland. People don't know about the opportunities, about the talent that is present here, what kind of problems we have. It could be similar, but a lot of times it could also be different from what you have in Germany, in Switzerland, for example. So, something along, so discover the Indian market, then validate, which is essentially assessing like the product market fit for an innovation, and then entry, which is how is it that you really actualize a strategy for India. So that is one part of work with the startups. On the other side, we're also committed to supporting, let's say, Swiss companies that are looking for innovations and technologies that are being developed in India to get inspired from India. We are doing amazingly well in so many fields. Now I use we both as an Indian as well as someone that's working for Swiss, I guess. But yeah, so it is really to show what India has achieved, how they could get inspired, or if you want to really have the best of technologies, many of them are really available in India to help in scouting for these. So that's the second part. Yeah.
Amazing. So are there any specific initiatives currently that you are driving?
So the market discovery, validation, and entry is a year-long series of things that keep happening. In a year, we support about 20 odd companies in one of these three phases. So I think that's something that just keeps on happening. And in 22, we have a great portfolio of mainly, I would say, startups that are in sustainability space. It also tells you how important this is for like both the countries. Uh, yeah, and digitalization along these lines and health tech. I think majority of our startups really fall under these three.
Amazing. Amazing. And majority of our listeners, Shweta, are actually aspiring biologists, who want to shape their careers. So I think they get inspired by, successful professionals' journey, and I consider you very successful. And I've seen your journey very closely. So for the audience, perhaps if you can highlight, your personal journey from pursuing a B.Tech in biotech at Anna to PhD in Cambridge, and then, leading innovation initiatives for Swissnex India. Perhaps you can take us back.
I think I'm going to take this chance to be a bit controversial and also very outspoken. Uh, so I think unlike most of the canned responses that one get, which is about passion and interest and almost making it sound like everybody knew what their journey was and then you find what it is. It's never like that, right? You always work with a set of constraints. I'm not saying these are constraints that are imposed on you by others, but these are also constraints that you put on yourself to say, okay, this is what I should do, this is what I want to be, this is what I want to get. So I would say my career journey has been really directed by these kind of constraints, so to say. So once I finished my PhD, I always considered it to be like a side effect of finishing my PhD quite young because I saw postdocs and I really thought they were quite older and they seemed to me that you have to it felt jaded in a way. So I said, okay, now it's good time to do something else. And there is this academic ego when you have published, when you have done. Somehow going and working immediately in a corporate feels like, okay, you've sold your soul. Um, so I said, okay, no. We have to really try to do something that is still somehow one foot in the academic stuff. And you see all these problems, you want to solve them. And I think that's how my first role at India Bioscience really came about. And I was, but one thing I always knew is that after I finished my PhD, I want to come back to India. It's not that I wanted to stay outside and build a career there.
Just to interrupt, I think it's a great story and I will let you continue that. But, perhaps you can go a little more back in time. What inspired you to pursue, say, biotech? Or did you ever want to be a scientist? And you said, that you have certain set of goals, but then you realize with time that perhaps this is not what I want to do. And then you make other decisions. So has this happened to you? So take us back in time and then, and then we'll continue to your journey about how you went back to India and other things. But yeah.
Okay. So I think like most listeners, I'm sure you have taken PCMB to keep both the engineering and the medical options open, right? So, and it so happened that I also had both the chances. So I had both the counseling that could happen. And then when I actually got a medical seat, I think I got cold feet because you have to do, uh, I guess, all the blood and gore that one has to see as being part of a medical professional. And then I think only at that time did I say, my temperament is not suited to this at all. And then,
You got a medical seat.
yeah.
So this is very unique because, I have been doing this podcast with several peoples. And one thing that I found common is that everyone was, or most of them were actually aspiring doctors, who couldn't land a medical seat. And then they kind of, switched from medicine to biotech or, and then one thing led to another. But this is a very unique podcast where like you got a medical seat and then you kind of got a cold feet and then you decided that you'll pursue it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go
And
ahead.
then, of course, in engineering, then you feel, okay, biotech is like the closest that you can do, right? So that's pretty much, that's why I said, no, most of my options have come from these constraints, which I have more or less imposed on myself. Yeah. So yeah,
And then
that's how.
you selected say B.Tech in biotechnology at Anna University.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I went into the state counseling. I never applied for IIT, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this was considered to be the best in Tamil Nadu. And I must say, it is one of the top programs in India as well. So it was a no brainer to kind of take that.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I think it's the second decision point, which is what do you do after, right? And I think I knew, and my family also uh, quite supportive, saying, higher education can get you to the next level. So you don't stop at like a bachelor's, you have to do something more. So I think, and also at CBT Anna University, where I studied, you had this good history of alumni network, and people that would go outside and do really well in their master's, PhD, etc. So, I mean, in that sense, there were enough role models, enough people who would even, I mean, when I say role models, it's not just somebody just coming and telling you, this is what you do. They would even share their SOPs. They would share their C's and say like this, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very guided in that sense. So I think it made a lot of sense having this too. And I remember what my father said to me. He said, you do whatever you want to do as long as you don't ask me for money and you can support yourself.
Wow.
So so that's practically that. And then when you apply for master's PhD, that PhD is much longer, but it's also funded. That
Mm-hmm.
kind of fulfills the criteria.
Absolutely.
Yeah, never. I think I'm a non-risk taker in the sense I will not go and take a loan to
Mhm.
study and then think how do I pay it back. So it became, and when I actually got couple of accepts, let's say few in the US. Cambridge was the only outside US application that I had made. But it made even more sense because there is a possibility to finish a PhD in 3 years.
Yeah. And I mean, Cambridge is like a no-brainer, right? Like it's one of the top universities.
Yeah. So, and versus I know in the US, 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, there is no saying anything. And I didn't like this whole shopping concept that you have to spend 3 months in your lab. And then what do you really achieve in 3 months in a lab?
Nothing.
Unless you're in computational, I feel not very much. So it's okay to not shop sometimes.
But Shraddha, before you applied to PhD, you never had like plans to being a scientist or something like that, or you just applied for PhD thinking that this is the best way to move forward in terms of higher
Exactly.
education. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was the best way to move forward. That's a kind of thought that I think I'm proud. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you got to accept
Yes.
at University of Cambridge without like doing a master's.
No, I did not do a master's. It was straight after a bachelor. So what they do, I don't know if it still exists. So you will have to check in case anybody is looking to apply. At that time, they would really put you. The first year is considered to be like kind of probation, so to say. So if you do well, you get a degree at the end of first year. Um, and if you do, let's say, a little more better, maybe you can even just pass out with a master's. Like you can convert whatever research you were doing into a master's and then leave.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they find that you're still fit and your work is also happening okay, that it could be considered as your first year of PhD. So those were like the three levels that you had. And I was lucky enough to be in the third one. In science, I always think it's a mix of luck and hard work, both together, right? You don't control everything. So, yeah. So I kind of made that into my first year of PhD.
Yes, and I've seen your journey quite closely, and I remember you had all the say great publications, whatever like is the actually scientific currency for an academic career. And yet you kind of choose to move back to India for a non-academic position. Tell us something more about that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail as well, right? So when I took my first non-academic, non-research role, many times I would also be asked, "Oh, is that why you are into this kind of role because you didn't do well?" And I felt having that scientific currency really was great because I could say, "Dude, I have 4 first author publications. Yeah. Move on. It's not that now can we talk business, you know?"
Yeah.
So I think even if one is looking to move out of research, out of hardcore research, it's very important. And I find that valid at every stage of career that whatever you do, you really have to strive to be good at it. I mean, it's a running joke in my family that it's okay even if you give like the meanest, lowest of jobs to her, she will still do it
The best.
quite well that she could do and say, yeah, I did really well in that. I can also do this as a profession. That kind of
Wow.
stuff has to be there. So I think it's a good message. Take pride in what you do. Do it well. And of course, like I said, might not be always translatable to life sciences research because not everything is in your control. But whatever is in your control,
Give your best.
and also to pick questions. I think that's very important. You have a finite time frame. I have great respect for people that are looking at, very long term or very challenging problems. But like I said, I'm driven by my own constraints. And one of the things that I apply is I have this time. What is it that I can really do in this time? Is this problem something that, let's say, I can tackle in this finite time? Or would it just need more? So I think just sometimes it's not such a bad thing to kind of talk to yourself and see, is it okay? Is it not okay? How much ambition is over ambition or how much ambition is enough? I think that in the scientific world, it's very less spoken about. But my thesis supervisor was great at showing me this mirror. And I think, yeah, that lesson is very lasting for me. It is so.
And was he disappointed, your thesis supervisor, when you said your future plans, or
Yeah, it's
like his reaction on this?
I mean, he might he's Lucas stiff upper lip kind of person. So he was disappointed, but no more than one sentence. In this sense, it is more or less
You-
your life, your path. You do as you see fit for yourself. Yeah.
And then when you went back to India, of course, when you are like already used to, say, the processes and lifestyle of the West, how challenging was it for you, to acclimatize back in the Indian system? I mean, in professional terms.
So I went outside to study right after my bachelor's. So I did not really have work experience. I think in hindsight, if there is one thing that I should have changed was to have a bachelor's, have a year or two of work experience, then do a PhD and then come because that's what really puts you on a next level.
Mhm.
Just having an academic credential doesn't really move you up a ladder without experience. That's what I find in hindsight if I have to tell my younger self to do something differently. So in terms of professional, I think because I really started my professional journey here in India, uh, I don't have too many comparison metrics,
Mhm.
so to say. Yeah. But a few things that I think in my business culture or how I work, I can say that I'm more generally European by nature.
Mhm.
I'm not the flamboyant American or, you know, uh, I'm more European. I'm very straightforward in
Mhm.
what is possible, what is not possible. No hard feelings. I will not give you false hopes.
Mhm.
And so this is what you get. And that I find was something that's come over time.
Shweta, coming next, if you can highlight some interesting stories and challenges that you faced upon returning back from Cambridge to India, And, even now, like being the head of innovation at Swissnex in India, and what are these challenges that you face and how do you overcome them?
I think luckily one challenge has solved itself, which is the age. When you are young, lot of people find it, especially if you are tending to work more in the academic circles where age and experience is really valued and respected a lot. I find that to make a dent with the more senior people, and there is also this culture of deference, right? Which is no, no, who's a what he's been a professor for 25 years. A kind of deference that you don't carry
Mhm.
uh, with you, then I think that's a challenge. But like I said, it solves itself. It's been plenty of time since I started working. Now I think I'm old enough. I think that's definitely a challenge for a lot of people to just remember or register in your mind that you come back to a hierarchical position in academia. I mean, even now, I'm just stumped by the adverts I see in the newspapers, for example, that says we are looking to hire, let's say, a professor or an assistant professor who has done the PhD and has like 7 years postdoc experience. And I'm like, postdoc is not a degree. You cannot put it out like that. Just say somebody that has research experience. Wherever that is, it should be fine. But I mean, such things really stump you a little bit. I think that's one of the curious things that I noticed. And the second, I think the challenge was also when you just talk of India. We are a continent. So no one person really knows like the length and breadth and how to operationalize everything in all the locations, so to say.
Mhm.
So I feel that it's very important to have people or, one can't just develop oneself to say, I will cover this whole breadth and so very difficult and not to generalize either. So how do you walk this fine line, especially when you are dealing with people that don't come from your context, that don't come from your country, and still, I mean, you represent an organization that's more national in nature, but at the same time, you have to really walk this fine line to communicate what you could while debunking a lot of things. At the same time, these statements could be true in some part of India or the other. I feel that that's a very big challenge. Like I can say anything and it's probably true, but what do you want to do? How you want to do? How do you justify? I think that's uh, that's something that normally comes with a lot of thought, and more times you do, I think you get a little bit better. And there are times like this wherein you say, no need for any kind of diplomacy.
And perhaps you can also tell us about your career transition story because it's not easy for PhDs to transition, as long as they have not planned about it. And I think for you, it has been one thing leading to another, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So perhaps, and not only the journey, perhaps some advices that you'd like to give to, anyone who is looking forward to a transitioning path, you know.
Yeah, I think one big thing is that, I find a lot of let's say PhDs or even my younger self, uh, when we do our planning, let's say, or when we think what could be good for us, many a times we don't know how to um, ask for our worth in terms of salary, ask for our worth in terms of resources that we need, ask for what kind of help we would need to succeed. And I think that's a baggage that we carry more from the academic work or the deep work that we do, wherein it's more individualistic in nature.
Mhm.
I find that in terms of any transition, overall, my 3 or 4 roles that I have done so far, I find that with every time, this conviction has just increased to say, no, it's completely fine to say, what is the financial support that I'm getting? I can only bring this to the table, but I need this and this in order to be successful. How is the organization going to supplement, you know, only then can we make that kind of impact. So I think um, that definitely has, I really wish that more and more people that jump into like hard problems or, want to do a lot. It just is so easy to get lost in your world and not really realize that just to ask for help, to ask what you need in order to make certain things possible. Yeah.
So after yeah, no, I totally hear you, and I remember, that I took your advice because I was also planning to come back to India, and then I evaluated this based on your advice, and thank you so much for that. Um, however, here I would like to ask you whether, because there are so many options after PhD that one can move on. Like, one can move to consulting, one can move to, medical affairs or marketing, sales, product management. There are plethora of career options, right? So how did you kind of decide, during those times that, this is something that this is the path forward for me?
So during my PhD, I did not have any targeted approach. So it was kind of, let's just say, okay, anywhere an opportunity presented, I would just volunteer and say, let's try this out also. Because by doing that, you learn something, and it's just nice to make another group of friends, or you just get a completely different experience that you never have before. So one example I can give is there was this student magazine at Cambridge that just needed some new snippets, for example. Never done it before, but it's like, then we will also try to do this. Start contributing small. But when you do that, you meet some people that are probably running the magazine. You understand how big of an effort design is, and why a unified design is so important in communication. I mean, it has nothing to do with how it would shape my career, but you build sensibilities that later on you use, and you never, without realizing. I think that's quite key. And then another experience, for example, is how do you analyze if a certain IP is relevant? I mean, till date, for my startups, the ones that we help them to enter a new market, it's very similar, right? The process, you have to really find the applicability. So few things you pick up, you don't know, but it's like just building quivers uh, in your bag, and that just come in handy. So for me, more than targeted, I would definitely encourage people to apply for opportunities as they come, because you never know when something is useful.
Absolutely.
So when I really wanted to move out of, the interbioscience role, then I went to IKP to work to support health innovations. That's a point wherein it was more or less, we can work with innovation. I have worked with a completely different patent. I mean, till then, that's not a path that was kind of aimed at, but you never know when it comes into.
So your advice would be to kind of volunteer for as many things possible.
And more deeper. Like when I say, something that requires some commitment from you,
Mm-hmm.
not volunteering in the sense one Saturday, kahin chale gaye 3 hours and then it's done. No, but something more repetitive, something that really needs you to build a skill set. I would say volunteer for things like that. Yeah.
So gain as many skills possible during a PhD, more or less transferable skills, and you might not know that time that this will be useful in future.
Right.
But then things happen, and you will suddenly find that
Yeah,
I've done
exactly.
this.
Oh yeah, you are more equipped than you thought.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. That's amazing. Shweta, as a follow-up question, I would like to also ask that, in spite of all the career options available after a PhD from Cambridge, what motivated you to kind of delve into the non-profit sector, and why did you choose what you chose, and, perhaps highlight on that?
Yeah. So I think it has to go back to education. So whether it's studying in Anna University, which is a state university, or even afterwards when I went to Cambridge, it was with the help of a scholarship near Cambridge, Nehru, and overseas research. So I always thought that the work I do has to have an impact beyond the organization, beyond me, beyond a few individuals. And I think that also influenced the choices that I made. And yeah, so for example, at India Bioscience, it was how is it that you can build a narrative for life scientists all over India. And while at IKP, it was more about funding and supporting innovations in tuberculosis control.
Mhm.
At Chikitsak, it was how can we improve rural healthcare delivery. And now at Swissnex, it's about how is it that you can really bring two countries which are so great in innovation together to work on certain problems or to that really impact even beyond borders.
Mhm.
For example, there is work that we do on sustainability, and it's because we really feel that these problems are not limited to, let's say, India, not limited to just Switzerland. If they are successful, if they are applicable, if we can help them, we surely make a larger impact, right? So it's always been about this impact that you can bring to a wider section of the society. I think that's the
Absolutely.
motivating factor.
So, a automatic follow-up to this would be, say, what are the goals, next goals for Swissnex India and the impact that you hope to make through your work?
Mhm. So we had just outlined at Swissnex in India our strategy till 2025.
Mhm.
And there we decided that, you know, broadly, let's say the areas that we want to focus on. I mean, you heard me during this podcast say sustainability and all.
Mhm.
And then, so that's obviously one, health tech and also digitalization. But at least in the first two, we have a lot more better idea of the kind of work that we want to do in the space that we want to be. Health tech is very big, but antimicrobial resistance within health tech, for example, is a niche area which is kind of ignored vastly.
Mhm.
Uh, so antimicrobial resistance is with when none of your antibiotics are going to be useful in fighting against the infections that you have. And already you see that people are resistant to several, I mean, the bugs that people have are resistant to several antibiotics. So it's really a pandemic that's not recognized. And both India and Switzerland are kind of very focused on this. So it's an example of two countries that have an interest in this topic in order to promote one health, in order to somehow alleviate this problem. Because if it becomes too big, even things that we consider to be routine now, like C-sections, will not be possible anymore.
And it's a huge problem in India, the super bug or you said this, um,
And we just went through COVID, so none of these problems are limited to one country anymore. If there is something that's resistant here, tomorrow it will be the problem in Japan, and day after tomorrow, I don't know, in the US. So
No, no, but no, I totally understand. And this reminds me of the fact that, when I came from India to Germany, I mean, I was very astonished because doctors were rarely writing any antibiotics, even if I had cough and cold. And India, and you take antibiotics like it's a chocolate or something, So I was like, that's a huge difference. And I hope that doctors still don't continue to kind of write antibiotics so casually, It's only when
but I find that it's a double way of farming. So if you go to a doctor that doesn't prescribe you antibiotics, people say, waste of my 400
yeah,
rupees. He does
that's
not even prescribe anything. For throat ache, he should have given me erythromycin and I will go doctor shopping. I'll go to the next doctor who will prescribe and give it to
that's
me
true.
and never go back to the first one again. So it's a bit of this market dynamics as well.
Yeah, but they should educate about this superbug and stuff and make people
Yeah.
understand why they are not describing or prescribing,
Exactly. I
So
think that's like quite
yeah,
okay.
exactly. Um, yeah, coming, you mentioned health tech,
And so
sustainability. That,
yeah,
that
sustainability is more about like decarbonization of sectors, or how is it that we can promote usage of renewable electricity. By that, it could be something that's being, I mean, steel generation. How could you make green steel, for example? Or in a lot of cases, that it's not that coal can be replaced overnight. but can you use some tech, some smartness in order to reduce whatever it is, and how do you better supplement and so on. So there are like different problems that you could look at as far as sustainability is concerned.
Amazing. And what are, can you tell us about the key trends currently, that is happening? Because I think a lot of things are happening in, especially in the sustainability, health tech, and edtech in India, So what are the key trends of this field?
So I'll do it one by one. I think
Yes.
edtech, for example, we are a clear leader in the world, which is great. I say that, fintech, edtech, you don't even have to tell people around the world how awesome India is. It's a
So
known fact.
edtech, do you see like companies like Baiju or Physics Wala, they're like funded so much, right? Like they had raised so much of capital. And do you see a very bright future for companies of that nature, or yeah, what are
So
the
I think it's like two different questions. So if you talk about valuations, that's a completely different scenario wherein you have been valued, you have raised so much money, and it all depends how these companies can go back to the path of being profitable, right? So ethics in India were mainly, at least the names that you said, were in a space wherein you had to first acquire customers, and then the strategy was with whatever customers you have, how is it that then you can start to sell? So people raise money in order to, spend enormous amounts on marketing and also imparting freebies. I mean, freebies also have a cost associated, but how much of it is translating and how much of it will translate to high value transactions or a path to profitability is what is yet to be seen. But at the same time, there is no denying the kind of technology that these companies have really built and how it has the power to impart personalized education at scale. Like if you go to a school, it's the same standard curriculum for every single individual. There is like 70 people in the class. For everyone, it's the same. It's the same style of teaching. And I mean, of course, a human teacher can only do so much. But with them, even if it's a class of 100, using the power of technology, like I can say, Shweta doesn't know fractals.
Mhm.
So let me just give few more, few more lessons on fractals, few more examples on it, and then do a re-quiz again to see if she has improved. That's what I mean by this personalized education at scale. I think that was probably not possible before, and they have really made it possible. So I think a lot of respect for the tech that has gone into edtech. And this is also allowing students to not just stick to one stream. So now today, if I was a biotechnologist, I'm very sure I can go and do like few courses on civil as well, just because they have increased this accessibility.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean I have to enroll into something else. Right? So yeah, so that's edtech. And then I think in sustainability, now pressure is coming more or less from the government side. Pressure is coming more or less from internally also. We have a lot of Indian conglomerates that have just stated goals for themselves, for their company, for their employees to match with the sustainability development goals. And now, the entire elephant machinery starts to work to see what you can maneuver in order to get there. I wouldn't say a lot of things can happen too fast, but for the sake of the planet, I guess we have to like break and move. But this is the dichotomy that's going to exist. I mean, one example that we just spoke about was coal for power, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that is still the most source of power that we have. And by saying no, that means that you are not including majority of the population to progress, to industrialize, to generate jobs. So how do you walk this fine line? So I think that's where innovations have a big role to play, because if you can come with something quite resilient, it has the potential to break this chain
Mhm.
and completely get into a new, more sustainable world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then And similar, I think similar to the whole edtech, health tech is now all about personalization, but at scale. So earlier, the tests that you have or the data that you have, what you eat, how you live, by like a combination of all of this, your genetic makeup, your predispositions, how do you put all of them together and create something that is valuable for you as a person? And if you can still crack that for millions, I think that's really the grain that many people are after.
Mhm.
So that's the trend.
And that's why you see a lot of, say, AI based, AI ML based health companies, like Cure AI and other names perhaps coming up in India. A lot of companies actually are trying to make sense of this, cumulative data that they are gathering through multi.
And AIMLs are only data models that you anyway use to analyze and then, give a result that was much harder to read before,
Mhm.
right? So while I think true AI is coming, but it would have to be more integrated. It really depends on how much you give, and each one is building their own models also in silo,
Mhm.
right? So I think it all depends on convergence of that as well. So yeah, AI is increasing the pace, but I think the medical field itself moves at the pace of trust. So how comfortable are you if AI will look at your reports and say, this is what you have got?
So
So
true.
once the society builds that trust, I think it will move much forward. Or if we don't build trust, we will be where we are right now.
Amazing. Shweta, as an expert in leadership and management, what advice would you give to aspiring innovators and entrepreneurs looking to make a difference in their, say, respective fields?
I think depends what vision you really have. And at the early stage, I think I could do 2 points. One is at an early stage when the stakes are less.
Mhm.
You really have to see whether the solution that you are building
Mhm.
is applicable to is applicable globally in many parts of the world. At some point, to decide at some point, should you become like a global leader or you want to be a local leader, right? So, but then getting that perspective to just understand what it would take in order to be, in order to build a world class product or a service is quite key. And the second one is also, the problem itself, like uh, how incremental is it something that you're going after like a moonshot? And how do you kind of brace yourself for failure? I think if you're going for moonshot,
Mhm.
the chances of success are, of course, very less, right? That's why it is called that. Or are you doing something that, let's say, it's lower in risk, and in that sense, then how quickly can you scale? How can you be profitable? But also have yourself as an entrepreneur to be ready to face these challenges internally. I think it's very important. Yeah.
And Shweta, you have been someone who has already, I think, worked very closely with, say, Bill, Melinda Gates Foundation. I remember when you were working at IKP, you were also like investing in startups, right? So, what are the key criteria you evaluate the, say, incoming ideas on? And is there any specific advice that you would like to, give to budding entrepreneurs who are about to pitch to their investors?
So it really depends on the entrepreneur, how they understand what the money is being made available for. So let's say at the time at IKP, when I was managing the grand challenges in tuberculosis control, the money was from USA, Gates Foundation. After some time, it was also from BIRAC, the Indian agency, DFID, UK one. So the motivation was essentially, can we get technological tools in order to help to stifle the growth of TB, right? And none of these investors, they said, The earliest part is the most risky one. So we will de-risk innovation by putting in money. By putting in small sums of money, if you hit a milestone, there is a chance to get even more money, or if not, it's okay. But I've invested over many or de-risking at an early stage with no expectation on return except we hope for like general good that a technology comes up that is applicable in certain settings. So that's the thesis. While let's say I also work with startups that have raised investments from venture capital. There, what is the thesis is that you will go, let's say, 10x, 20x in a very finite period of time so that you can give me returns.
Mhm. And
So it's finite period of time and it's dependent on your growth, it's dependent on your valuation that you give me 10x returns.
Mhm.
So you should also know that this is why you're taking the money. This is what the investor really expects in return.
Mhm. And are there any key criteria that you kind of you evaluate? Because I know that you were involved in
Diligence.
these ideas.
Yeah, so at the idea stage, it is different kind of diligence
Mhm.
wherein you want to know more about, at least theoretically, something possible is the other people that are involved. Do they have this skill sets in order to make it happen? If they don't have, perfectly fine. But who is your collaborating partner? How do you think that you will fill this gap? So it's a lot about the thought process and how people will fill certain gaps, right? So to and it's not like, is it a copycat of something else? Is it a novel and so on? So those things are there at an earlier stage. At a slightly later stage, when let's say the idea is formalized, your company is formalized, you cannot run an entire company on a very siloed approach, right? What if this fails? What is your plan B?
Perhaps.
And how invested are the founding team into it? Because it's a hard problem. Like 2 months or 2 years later, if one founder leaves, it's a very big hole for a startup, right? So how invested is everybody into this idea? Do you have this also, do you have technical expertise? Can you do operations? Can you do compliance? Is it possible for you to also generate sales, make money,
Mhm.
with one person, with five people? How do you achieve this? So I think that becomes more crucial. Yeah. Apart from, of course, the technology itself.
Mhm. Awesome. And Shweta, a lot of biology students, I'm sure, like after seeing this podcast, would ask me, how to build a career in innovation. And you are somebody, who has walked this path. So, what would be your most important advice, to students who are looking forward for a career in innovation?
I think at a student stage, a lot of people, when you're in an academic environment where a lot of this intellectual property is being generated, it could be patents, it could be ideas, but I think you have to put yourself out there and also research saying, okay, this is an IP that came out of my university, my lab, my department, whatever it is. At least can I look at its applicability in this space? And of course, even on I know the portals like edtech, Coursera, etc., also tell you some of the frameworks that you can use in order to assess applicability of certain IP, for example. So having that basic understanding is something you could really build right at the beginning. And it's not only, I mean, nowadays innovation is a normal word. It has ceased to be a buzzword because if you are a legacy company, you are still, I mean, look at Philips earlier. I think when I was young, it was really a company that was into lights and electrical fixtures and so on. Now it's a health tech company.
It does a lot of things, yeah. And you have to innovate. Otherwise, I mean, there are also examples of
Exactly. So
companies
it
that
is
fail because,
everywhere.
yeah.
So I think it's always good to get a feeling for what it means in different scenarios. I think that's quite good to have. And then you never know in 5 years, would this have a new name or not? But yeah,
Wow. What would be your specific advice to women in STEM? Because I know that, especially women, they have additional challenges, as in their pregnancy, and the career peaks both coincide. So, how did you overcome those challenges? And what would be your advice to, any women, trying to solve this challenge in the STEM field?
it's a challenge, and I feel that sometimes men also don't get their due because it's probably equally challenging when you have a young family. And I think one of the things was when she and I decided to get married. Before that, we had several conversations wherein it was clear he was also more or less okay. I'm into this, and I could say, okay, I don't see myself ever taking a break. I mean, that would change, but at that point, right? So taking a break and how do we do this? So both of us were on like similar wavelength with respect to that. And one part was okay, of course, if the family support comes in order to raise kids, then nothing like it. But if not, neither of us would feel super guilty in getting help, whether it is via a daycare, whether it is via a nanny, for example, in order to make this possible. Right. So at least I think it's important to have that baseline
Mhm.
done. And for me, I'm very lucky because both sides, my parents and his parents, um, both of them have never blinked an eye, or that possibility of me taking a break or him taking a break hasn't crossed their minds at all. So,
Yeah, but that's also
well,
the choices that you make. Like, as you said, you already had this conversation, and then that's how you kind of, uh, because I see also a trend of many women, these days, not like, career is most important for them. They don't want to have kids, stuff like that, So perhaps,
like personal choice to have a kid or not, because I mean it's hard work. And I mean, let's just see, right now, I also again make that choice to say I want to be in a role or in a company that also supports us having families. And same for my husband as well. He's also very conscious about the kind of role. So he wouldn't hesitate to take half day because a kid is sick. And his company supports that, and same for me. So that also kind of narrows, let's say, your choices, right?
Mhm.
So if you have made a choice of not having a kid and prioritize something else, then maybe there is a wider range of companies to choose from, for example, to work for, or even if you're in a very hard role. But I feel that there are plenty of people that work in different kinds of segments, and we don't have to just look at corporate careers. For example, I find that the toughest, parents are really from lower middle class, because for them, to keep earning is the only way to survive, right? I can afford to actually take a break for a year and it'll not make a huge dent to my financial profile. But for them, they have to work day in, day out in order to make it possible for their families to live a normal life. So I think that's more like the kind of role models that we can really look at to see how. And for kids, they need to see that the families value them, but at the same time, they also need to see the work that is needed in order to get what you need. And I think people benefit, and at least you also your families benefit from seeing two working parents or working grandparents. And
Wow. Yeah. So, Shweta, tell us now about your hobbies.
so. Hobbies, I would say, so now I have two kids, 5 and 2.
Mhm.
So that hasn't left me with a lot of time for hobbies, not a lot, but still now I think trying to get back into painting, trying to get back into badminton again after a very long time. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So, Shraddha,
At reading books, so that I keep
reading
it in
books,
the
yeah,
target.
I was expecting that, yeah. Or is it like, or
Fiction.
side? Would you like to kind of recommend some books for our audience and also for me?
Also for you, I think the last self-challenge that I had was before the movie Ponniyin Selvan released. I said, oh, it's also come to theaters, but I haven't read the whole set of books, right? So I said, I'll only watch the movie after I finish all the books. So I would definitely recommend reading, for example, that year.
Amazing.
Oth- Otherwise, my go-tos, for example, is still Amar Chitrakatha.
Amar Chitrakatha. Okay, that's
Yeah. Half an hour, you read something start to end and you have a story. Like, yeah.
awesome.
And I like culture, mythology. So, very good.
Amazing. So thank you, Shweta, for sharing your insights with us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Same here, Manish.
And for the audience, thank you for tuning into Biology Career Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to get the latest episodes delivered straight to your device. See you next time. Bye bye. Bye, Shweta. Bye.
Bye.